United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America on WSGW. Now, here is your host, Kareem Bowen.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America. Today, we're going to have a little fun in the studio. I am actually going to decrease, and we're going to switch roles here. Jonathan is going to take over, and I do a lot of asking questions and poking and prodding and getting to, I think, the in-depth conversations. And on today, we're going to switch the stream. I've heard people like ask questions or either like in the community, or they may pull me aside and ask me something, or I might hear them asking, another individual on one of the other stations, the other show, well, the same station, different show. Art Lewis, in particular, people call in and they say, Art, why is that guy that's on United something about the flag shades of gray? What's the comedian that I just sounded like?
I don't know.
I don't know. What's your name?
Are you trying to do Gilbert Gottfried?
That's who I'm talking about. Yeah, when I said it, that's who I thought about. But today we're going to have a changing of dynamic. We're going to turn the tables, and for a chance, I am going to be the interviewee, and my show producer, John B. in the place B, the young guy with the fresh face, is going to take the action was everything. He's going to take the helm, and we're going to go through and have some conversations. And so my promise to those of you who are out there who are listening is to be 1,000% honest, because I think that is a part of what people are intrigued
1,000% honest.
1,000%. 1,000%.
What color underwear are you wearing?
Black with orange stitching.
There we go.
There you go.
That's the honesty test.
We're there. We're at that place. But Jonathan, I'm gonna go ahead. First of all, how are you doing, Jonathan?
I'm good. This is so far the best part of the day.
His day just started, y'all. But anyways, we're gonna get into this. If you're listening, you pull in, you come into this. I want you to like, tag, and share this with other folks so that they can be a part of this conversation. And then if you have thoughts or opinions about the things that we are discussing or saying, by all means, we want you to put that information in there. It's always interesting to see what our listeners are thinking. So we want to give you that wonderful opportunity. So we're going to start over there. I'm tossing the ball. Catch John.
Got it. So
that was so animated.
Yeah. I wanted to actually pick up kind of where we left off last week, because last week we had this list of questions. Yeah. And you handed them to me. We were going back and forth.
There are some good questions.
And there are some good questions on there. Some of them very clearly pointed at one community or the other. We were talking about kind of the differences in white America versus black America. Yeah. And I had asked you, and we talked about this after the show. Yeah. But I had asked you a question that I think was pointed at white America, at least in my opinion. But the question was, have you ever felt accused of something historically that you were never personally participating in?
Yeah, because you thought I didn't answer the question.
I wasn't happy with your answer to that one.
Okay.
I understood your answer, but I think the thought behind it, what comes to mind immediately, is slavery. White America gets accused of not participating in, but that's kind of what it feels like at times is, well, whites oppress blacks, therefore you're
all participants.
Yeah, you are guilty
all
of that
actors,
in some way.
Right.
Yeah.
But by the way, we don't feel that way. Like black people don't really see it that way. I understand. But
there's
go ahead. You're asking.
Well, the perception is
yeah,
benefiting from.
Okay.
So you benefit from it, so you need to feel the guilt of it, is kind of the message that is received. It might not be the message that's put out there. That's the message that is received by many people.
Okay.
I want to know, is there anything correlating on the other side? Is there something that, well, black people do this, and no, or black people have done this?
We've been blameless. We've been amazing. I'm just joking. But I'm trying to think of something. I don't know. Can you think of something that I don't?
What came to mind immediately was many of the race riots that have happened over the years. And it's like, well, black people burn down cities.
Okay.
Okay. Kareem Bowen wasn't out there throwing Molotov cocktails.
Right.
But I can see how that would be kind of a similar feeling.
Okay. Well, first of all, and I think it's important to understand, so my white brothers and sisters, y'all, you might learn from this one, because I don't feel personally responsible for everything that happens as it relates to, like you were talking about, like, when we look at things such as riots, because for one, black folks aren't the only people who riot, so it's kind of hard to kind of look at it in the same way. But I also say, what I will say is, I'm a firm believer, and this is my phrasing, and someone may say it's different, but I really believe that riots are a tantrum of the soul. When you feel like you have no other way to be heard, you don't feel seen, I think that the natural tendency for folks to do is to act out. It's to riot. It's the child who's acting badly, and parents are in the store, and what do the psychologists tell you? Don't feed into the negative behavior. Reposition, even with pets, reposition your body, and don't give attention.
It's attention.
Yeah. And so when I think of that, with the exception, now I will, the Rodney King riots. If you talk about the Rodney King riots, I think it was like 1990 or something like that. And I've just dated myself. I don't know if Jonathan was alive then, but
nope.
But that was a riot that was true. I mean, and I would say everyone who felt that the situation was unjust with Rodney King felt a particular way. I believe that Black America in that was a Black situation, a Black man being beat by law officers from LA and being found not guilty. So as a Black man, we were mad. And so I think that was an example of what you might talk about. But to me, there was a causal link to the response, whether it was appropriate or justified. I can understand that. After all, it's not like Black folks just out there like, hey, it's Tuesday, let's go riot. There's usually, and most often, the kind of choice that you saw is usually a judicial response that incites the riot. So,
okay,
yeah,
that was one question that I thought of an answer to, and it kind of surprises me that wasn't, that you don't feel as though you're blamed for that. I know you don't feel responsible for it, but you don't feel like.
But that's the same thing, Jonathan. Like I think white America goes around thinking that Black America blames for slavery, and that ain't how we feel. What we hope is that folks can understand that there's a cause and effect piece that makes sense, and we want people to take those things into account.
Okay. Hold on to that.
Yep.
Like let's highlight that answer, and we'll come back to it later.
Okay.
So I guess I was going to ask you as an individual, but I want to ask kind of more generalized.
You going to ask me as the Black nation, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're gonna speak for all Black Americans right now. No. But from your point of view, why is Black America so obsessed with race? Why is that the thing?
It's funny, because I'm glad you asked this question, because this is specifically one of the questions that I heard Art trying to, like, Kareem gets to talk about what he wants. But I don't believe that I am obsessed with race. I mean, I am a Black man. I love being Black. I'm Black and proud. Say it out loud. Shout out to James Brown. But anyways, I don't feel like there is an obsession with race. But what I do believe is that when I wake up and I walk out my door, it's the one thing that I think that you see before anything else. Before you can even have a conversation and I'm walking across the sidewalk, it's the thing that you see. And it has been honestly, I think it's been something that white America has been fascinated by, or has been more central to, and cause and effect, that has been such a central part of the treatment of Blacks since we've been here in the United States, has been based upon our ethnic or our racial makeup, And so therefore it has been a key defining piece on how we've been viewed in this nation. And so we are now in a place where America is turning the page or trying to turn the page on those conversations. But this is how we have been defined for our entire existence here in this nation.
Where do you think America is in that? You said
Ooh.
Is turning the page, and then you went to trying to turn the page.
Yeah, because I think that there is, I'll say this honestly and truly, and I love these conversations that we have because I think that they're so important to challenge and push people to really just think about where they are on things that we say, oh, it's no big deal anymore. But the reality of it is, I think so many things are still are echoing from what has happened in the past. I don't think that as a nation we will ever get over the issue of race. I just don't think that it ever will, because I think that we have people who yet have racism and prejudice and those things. They're ideologies, and it's you cannot kill an idea, so it's almost impossible. And then you have, as you were talking, the entanglements of the African American descendants of slaves who now look and be like, this nation has to right its original sin. And I don't think that unless there is a reparations, which I don't think white America has an appetite for as a whole, as a majority, that conversation will ever die.
Okay. I think those the answers to the last two questions are interesting.
Why
because summarizing,
mm-hmm.
the reason that race keeps coming up is because white America continues to be fascinated by it and continues to hold on to prejudice, where at the same time, Black America feels wronged. And
I don't feel, I don't, let me correct that.
Okay.
I don't feel wronged.
So you think that
I don't feel wrong. That if we look at our lives and we look at how my life has gone and how I have been blessed, regardless of how I was raised or reared or where I came from, my circumstances, I have been blessed. And I've experienced this dream or this portion of the American dream in a way that most folks don't ever get to. So I'm not ever, you're never going to hear me say, I feel like I've been wrong.
Okay.
That's never. And I think that there's a large sentiment of Black folks who don't feel wrong. We think that there is an institutional wrong that exists, but I don't feel that I've been wronged. I believe that I've had great opportunities and experienced great things and have been able to live a portion of the American dream. And I'm thankful for that. So I don't feel that way. I think that there are some injustices that exist. And I think that there are exceptions to the rule. If you look at my experiences and where I come from, many things about my life are the exception to the rule.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm a Black man on white radio right now.
Fair enough. Yeah. I'm going to ask you to generalize a little bit, though.
Okay.
Because there is that push for things like reparations. There is that push behind DEI as a making right of a wrong. And that's not something that white America is going, hey, we need to do this.
No, but this is the thing. Nothing in this country happens without the support of white America. And I say that because civil rights, although fought and branded as a movement of Black Americans, and I think it's important, Black folks freed Black people. When we talk about slavery, it wasn't white people saying, oh, I feel bad, we should go free the slaves. No, slavery was big business. Textiles were big business. This was an important part of American history. And so Black people worked hard to free themselves. But there was also the support of white America that says, hey, this is not right. This is no longer wrong. And there was this consensus. But I want to be very clear. White people didn't free Black people from slavery. Black people freed Black people from slavery. There was assistance from those in key places and people, because I don't think that every white person is just an evil person. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So there are people that can look at things and say, you know what, this is wrong. I'm going to do what's right. So I want to be on the right side of right. And so I think that those things are very important. And when white America agrees with those things, there is a greater movement of things happening. So when I look at the idea of reparations, and I'll give you this example, reparations as a national conversation is a hotbed of opinions, right? But my family, and I shared this before about the GU 272 being a part of 272 slaves that were owned by the Catholic Church, then sold into slavery again to plantations, which is where I grew up in Maryland, Louisiana. So from Maryland to Maryland, Southern Maryland, to Maryland, Louisiana, Baton Rouge area, displaced, removed from everything that they had. The students now are looking at what's going on. This is way later, right? And they're saying this was not right. It was wrong for the Catholic Church to own slaves, the Jesuits. And they have said, you know what, we want to pay what we can or offer what we can to make amends. And they've offered, a lot of money, some of it for educational purposes, some for taking care of seniors and things of that nature, which is absolutely, so if you can find that you were tied to this body and you can certify, which my family is certified, then these funds are available for you for education. There's an allotments for all of these different things that are important to empower people. The students now have taken that same vote. They voted for reparations at Georgetown University. There is now a resident hall named Alec Hawkins, which is my fifth great grandfather. But this is because the students, which is so rare, they're saying this is not right. This is how we can atone for what we have done wrong. And so now the university is determining what they must do. Reparations and atonement for sins can often be a slow process, but I think that it's a necessary conversation.
So it's something that is coming from white America.
Fueled largely by the student population at Georgetown.
Yeah.
And so reparations means that Black America has to be affirmed of the fact, like, yes, we were wrong. But white America also has to understand, yes, even though we did not attribute to those wrongs, we do benefit from historical, the tenets that allowed them to take place, whether it be just, because it wasn't just slavery. It wasn't just, just owning slave people for their labor, but it was also the other industries that came out of the textile industries. It was cotton, it was tobacco, it was cigars. It was all of the things that were necessary for America to become America and to really make money in their international trade with other nations. And so I think the only thing that Black America hopes is that white America could find the space to say, this is wrong, and we can understand historically how this may attribute to some of the things that we see today. What is the corrective action, if there is one? And what has happened so far, since you brought up affirmative action and DEI and those things, is that they've created systems that did not necessarily benefit the targeted audience in the manner that they wish they had, which whenever the government does, that's also often what takes place.
Yeah. I've got a topic that I want to bring up. We've got a few minutes left in this segment, but I'll start kind of on it here. I think that a large portion of white America feels fatigued with the conversation around race. It's how long like emancipation. We can all agree that was a good thing. Civil rights, equal rights, like it came in steps, it came in phases. But now under the law, people are equal, and we see different implementations and different things being taken down throughout the years. But now it seems as though the goalpost is moving.
Okay.
Now it's these DEI things where, okay, now you need to work to, on your dime, give Black people that step up. On your dime, you need to pull people up through from things that you did not directly contribute to, though there may be the understanding that maybe white America benefits from it. And now we talk about reparations and things like that. It's where does the goalpost end? When is it done? I think that in modern day, I think Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream, we're judged by the content of our character and not the color of our skin, by and large, across the nation. And I think with each generation that becomes more and more true. It takes time, but I think we've reached a lot of the equality that was asked for. And now we're asking for more and more and more. And we're furthering the conversation down the line, where does it end?
Very interesting question. I'm not surprised by this question. I think that this is, and how preface it's a great question for you to present, because I think that there is a great sentiment across the board,
and that's what I'm trying to represent.
I wanted to say that because there's people like, what is he asking? I understand why you asked that question. So this is what I'll say. The idea of white America saying we think that enough is enough, like the goalpost has moved. And I'm just going to say it this way. When I think of equality, let me start with freedom. When I think about what freedom looks like, and I look at what had to happen for freedom to take place, and the fact that the question is posed from someone who has never had to fight for the right to exist, fight to be considered human, fight to exist without encumberment or fear of existing before the fight for freedom, is a powerful thing. And so there have been a number of fights that this fight of racial equality or acceptance or slavery, that encounters that are so deep that as we begin to talk about equality, that's why the opportunity and chances for change and the things that have been put in place for change took so long to take place, was because we had to, first of all, define Black people as human before we could talk about their rights and their equality. We're going to take our first break. I love the question. We'll talk about it more on the other side.
You're listening to United Shades of Gray on WSGW.
This is Kareem. We're back with more United Shades of Gray. We're here having a conversation. Jonathan, my producer, is actually stepped in, and I asked him, I said, listen, John, all of those questions that you think white America may sometimes, because I kind of just fly out the handle when I say things and may not be able to put things in category. And I know people are like left reeling, but you asked me before break about, how white people wondering and having that question, when is enough enough? The goalposts are moving. First you had to do this and you had to do this. And so I'm trying to answer that question in a very summary way. So let me say this. What I say about that is that as a Black man, an African-American descendant of slaves, it always appeared, and it yet appears, that the real freedom that is desired, the real equality that is desired by the African-American person in America has always been one where the goalpost has been moving. It was always, you're asking for too much too fast. Take your time. And that comes from people who don't understand what it is like to not be free. People who don't understand what it's like to understand that the color of your skin creates a certain kind of feeling. And the color of your skin means that you're uneducated. The color of your skin means that you're worthy to be treated in a way that is less human.
I don't think we're in a world where that's true anymore.
Well, I think that there are pieces of that still exist, and there's some examples of things that have happened even recently. But even with those things, like the idea that enough is enough, how do you say that enough is enough when there have been hundreds of years of enslavement, not just hundreds of years of slavery, but then also hundreds of years of benefiting from Black patents? Go ahead.
I'm going to pause you right there.
Yeah, go ahead.
So you see, can you see how you saying that kind of thing, a white person hears, you need to make up for that. You need to feel guilty for that.
No, I don't.
You don't.
Because that's not even what my intent is.
How can you question me asking for more when there have been hundreds of years of your people oppressing my people?
Yes. No. That's not how can you question hundreds of years of asking for more, but how can you question the fact that the goalpost is moving, and that's what I'm addressing.
Okay.
Because the fact of the matter, the only thing that the Black American wanted ever in this nation was to be left alone. If you look historically and you take a look at it, we as a people were best off when we were left alone. We had banks and grocery stores. The idea, and I think more African Americans are lending themselves to the concept that the idea of desegregation was probably one of the worst things that could have happened for Black America. Because before desegregation, we had grocery stores, we had banks, we had, our own educational system, we had doctors and lawyers, we had our own. And what desegregation did was mean that you can move it to places that you weren't wanted, that maybe you were red line when coming. And so that's what I'm saying. So we can say that slavery, ended, but even though slavery ended, as I said, you can't kill an idea. So the ideas and the ideals that existed that made slavery possible continued. And they went from blatant disrespect or blatant issues to, from white hooded people with the KKK to now business suits and into policy. And so I often will say to you that today that the racism is in the policy, because you can no longer by law just be outwardly blatantly racist. But we can create policies that favor and benefit certain people's groups. And we see that happening. We see a dismantling. My grandfather said, don't ever allow a person to be responsible for feeding you, because when they don't feel like feeding you anymore, you won't eat. And so we see a dismantling of those very policies that were meant to create equity before they've even been able to fully target the population that they were intended to meet. So I don't think the goalpost has ended. I just think that we went from playing football to playing soccer. Like it became something different. And I think that many times it's hard for us to really look at it, because how can I, as a Black man who's never been enslaved, look at you as a young white man who's never had a slave and hold you responsible for that? I can't. And I don't think that that is what Black America desires. But I think that what we're asking is that what we want is for you to recognize that there is a historical and an eternal benefit from starting at the 75-yard line in a 100-yard meter race. And because of that, there have been perpetual victories. And the fact that we can say that there is this element of equality really speaks to the vigor and the stamina and the excellency in which Black people, I think, have executed in this nation.
Okay, so today's world.
Yeah.
Two next door neighbors, a white family and a Black family.
Yep.
Both of them have a kid, same day. They bring the kid home. What benefit does the white kid have that the Black kid doesn't?
What part of the country are we in? Because
no, we're talking about race.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
If everything is if it's racially based,
yeah,
then it shouldn't matter.
I would say to those two children that they have, the world is their oyster and there's great potential. What white America still fails to realize is that there are many places in the South that are just as racist today as they were during Jim Crow. That's why I asked the question, what part of the country are they in? There are parts of this nation that are so ready for change and so ready for equality that your statement can be taken and say that they have the same opportunity, same chance to move forward and access that American dream. And then there are spaces, even in places that are not the greatest, that those same things can be true. What is also I think is indicative of this problem that's important to understand is that the spirit of the Black man has now tasted what freedom and success looks like. And so it's impossible, as you said, you can't kill an idea. It is impossible to kill my desire, my idea, this new thing. And I push the dream of excellence. I push the dream of freedom. I push the dream of achieving to every young African-American person that I can come into, because you can't kill an idea. And once you realize that you're capable of achieving, once you are given space to be able to create a place where you can reproduce, wash, rinse, or repeat, it's impossible to kill the dream. So that I little tongue in cheek on my response there, but I think that the American dream can be achieved. Is that without incident, without pushback? not, but it can be.
Okay, that's helpful.
Yeah.
But it's you still didn't answer the question.
No, the question. I think what you wanted from the question is that there is no difference, and they have the exact same opportunity. But once again, I think that's looking at a glass through life with kind of a rose tinted.
Well, my point is, you're gonna tell Jimmy Bob, white guy living in a trailer park, that he has some advantage over black people because of the color of his skin.
Now, when you say that that's a very different situation, because this is what I never understood. When we look at folks who live out in the country, and I'm mad that you said Jimmy Bob. I got what you're saying. When we look at rural white America, their peril and their plight today has become consistent with that of Black America. And yet they still don't understand that. And I think a lot of that is due because they've bought a ticket to what I've said before, to whiteness. And so because they think of that, they see themselves differently than what Black people in an urban city might think.
Okay. Yeah. I get that.
Yeah. But I agree with you. There's no difference.
Some of these questions I've been asking have been a little more generalized, not necessarily 100% what I think.
Right.
But what I do think at this point in time is that we're kind of beyond legislating out racism. I think the government has kind of gone as far as it can without overstepping other people's rights. And I think in some cases they have overstepped other people's rights in the cause of furthering Black people's rights. And opportunities, I'll say. I won't say rights, but I'll say opportunities. And I think we're at a point where we can't look at the government anymore as the vehicle to push a solution.
What do we look to then?
Because
the reason I asked that question, because it's been the government. It's always been the government. It's always been the Supreme Court. Every single time when Blacks were at a point where they think, hey, we're getting ready to really get it, there would be a Supreme Court ruling that would completely upend all of the successes that were taking place. We see that now with Clarence Thomas on the bench. We're seeing those same types of movements taking place, that where there's certain things and we're almost at the point where we're going to get it, there's another case that comes that takes us back. We see those very basic things that I think that are important across the board, because let's be clear, Black people have knocked down doors that Latino Americans and Mexican Americans have come through, that the immigrants have come through of all races and nationalities, that internationals have come through. And until all of us are equal, really, none of us are really equal. And so I think that when
what's left to get?
What do you mean what's left to get?
Are we not equal?
No, this is what I've learned even more recently as we talk about this, is that America would prefer an African who is not an ADOS, African-American descendant of slave, but an international African. There is something about the African-American who's a descendant of slavery here in the United States that this nation just simply cannot digest. I'm not even sure exactly I know what it is, but I see now when we look at, the whole fight for Harvard and, where white men are not necessarily going to college. So that whole fight for higher education is white men weren't going to college at the same rate. African-American women and white women were going to college and achieving. The numbers for African-American males were increasing, but white men were decreasing. So the fight that we see here is not one of us versus them. As we said earlier, many of the problems that white men are experiencing are the same problems that Black men have been experiencing for years. And the reality of the situation is that it's no longer the us and the them are no longer the same person.
That's interesting. Because it is. When we look at DEI programming, and you alluded to this earlier, it hasn't benefited Black people.
Not in the way that they thought it would.
Not in the way that they thought it would. But it has, at least perceptionally, cut into the opportunities of white men.
Who's the them? Who's the us?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
But when you look at it, and I think that we never had this conversation, I think, in this, white men have been, and I say this, and I think my white sisters will agree with this. White men have been put in a position to where they were always in control. They were the ones who were going to decide when black folks got a right to vote, when black women got a right to vote, when white women got a right to vote, right? So now looking at this, so there was a passing down of the baton. So when we look at who's going to run a country, it was going to be what white man is going to replace this white man. And now we're entering into a place when we talk about equity and how things change. Policy has the ability to change when we use it the way it's supposed to. And we now see that there is a white woman that may have that same position, or a black woman that may have this, even a black man. So now it feels, and I can understand it. I can understand how white men may feel in this country, because you're not the by far choice or selection. There's a white woman who may come and whoop your behind with her qualities, her capabilities, and her experience. And let's not begin to talk about their resume. So I can understand from a perspective. Because I think it's been a perspective.
There are systems put in place to give that person a leg up. So even if their resume, their qualities are not up to the same par, well, they check these boxes, so they're in.
And so you get some entrance, right?
White men put those into place.
But what I'm saying is that power never concedes itself fully. Frederick Douglass says it, and it's so true. I'm going to give you some power as long as I have the ability to have more power. Or if you get too much power, I'm going to take that power back. And so I think that's been the dance and the struggle. When you look, that's why we have, those names, the Rockefellers, the Levi's, like all of these names. And at the head of all of those great families and these great companies, they pass it down from father to son. We see something different with the Heinz Corporation, because it went from a father to a daughter. But these are new phenomena. So I get the reason why white men in America feel like, they keep moving. It's because equity means that there is going to be a time when you are not the obvious choice, when there may be other choices in the room. And so I'm impressed. And I'll say this, I don't like a lot of things. One of the things that I love about, oh my gosh, am I really going to say this? I'm going to say this about Ivanka Trump, is that she is a woman in a very male-dominated space who is carving out a space for her to do what her brothers are doing. She's not applauded the way by her children, by her father, the way that the boys are, but she's a woman doing it for herself. So I can appreciate just seeing that. And there's not a lot that I agree about, but I am encouraged by the fact that there are women who are in places that are doing great things. And I use that as an example because the successor to Donald Trump will not be Ivanka Trump.
Okay. I disagree. I don't disagree with the framing necessarily, but I think you are framing it in a partial way that isn't exactly
what's
representative.
What's partial?
The white guys are upset because other people have ability to take over.
No, they've always had the ability, but now they have access to the opportunity.
Okay.
And that's what equity is. Equity is not like, let's just give away free stuff. Equity is like, hey, we gave all of this stuff away. We gave opportunities to everybody. But what we recognize is that everybody did not have, equal. Equity means I'm going to make it so that you can take advantage of the opportunity. And that's what gets scary. I'll give you an opportunity if I know you'll never meet it. But if I give you an opportunity and I prepare you and I give you what you need to seize that moment, now you become afraid. I'm afraid of you because you might be able to actually actualize what has been put in front of you. And I think it's a scary place to be. I get it. I do get it.
Okay. I understand the concept of equity.
Right.
And I understand.
I wish,
the thing.
Go ahead.
The thing about the equity,
right,
is that it is a zero-sum game. So
what do you mean by that?
In giving access to opportunities to people, it shoots others in the foot.
How's that?
You're giving it's unfair advantage.
No, you just said
you give opportunity. I understand.
Yeah, that's what you said.
No.
And giving opportunity to everybody, how does that shoot someone in the foot?
There's a difference between giving opportunity and, as you say, access to opportunity. You're artificially lifting someone else up to where someone else is.
But that's historically what has happened for white America for a very long time.
I disagree with that concept.
I can get that, and I can understand how you might feel that way. But if I'm not allowed to apply, and then I'm allowed to apply, but you've had 12 generations that have been allowed to apply, I may not necessarily understand how this applying process happens. And so if I've not been allowed to go to school for 10 years, and then you allow me to go to school, and I have a first generation going to school, and we're both applying, and there's something called, when you have a legacy, that means you have a grandfather, a father, and a son who all go to the same school. What is that called? That's called a benefit. It's called a privilege that exists because historically your family has done this. And when we talk about equity and DEI and opportunities and affirmative action, we never look at how those things operate on the other side of that coin.
It's interesting. I understand where you're coming from, but I don't think the benefit is there for white America. I don't think there's that much of a benefit, and if there is,
what do you mean there's not that much of a benefit?
I don't see that. Well, your grandfather, your father, what, et cetera, et cetera. I understand what you're saying in business,
but it happens.
It gets handed down.
But do you know that in education, it's a real thing?
No,
it is. It is a very real thing. And those who have
today still,
they're called legacy. Yeah.
Okay.
And so if you have preferential entrance into an institution, if you have your legacy, that means
I think doing away with that is preferential to uplifting other people on what could be just on skin color, on gender, on et cetera, et cetera.
I think if we do away with those systems, we don't have a need for these others.
Fair enough.
And I think that has been the statement that Black America has been saying forever. But
it's easier for the government to implement things than it is for them to take things away.
Your words, not mine.
Yeah. No, and that's what I'm saying. We can't legislate this anymore.
Let me say this, Jonathan. I think that if legislation happens because we don't want to concede something, but the reality of it is that if we are truly going to be United States of America, then what that means is that we have to understand what benefits one benefits all. That means that we have to also take into consideration that opportunity for all Americans make America a better place. And it's hard. Nobody wants to concede power or an opportunity or give something to someone else when they have children that they want to provide for as well. So I get the kickback. It just exists.
Okay. Last minute. You do this to me all the time.
So I'm
going to do it to you.
No, go ahead.
I'm going to ask you a whole new question in this last minute. What does Black America think about the activism for the minorities shifting from Black America to other communities?
I'm for it. I'll tell you this. I think that this is why I'm for it, because I don't think that what Black America should get will ever happen in its time. But I do understand that we are the United States of America. Do I think about internationals and immigrants and other folks should get those same opportunities? Absolutely not. And sometimes that's where it seems like we're pitted. You get one or the other. But I'm not going to buy in that fallacy, because I believe that any America that is going to be diverse, that is going to be great, requires everybody to have the same opportunity. So I'm excited about that. I want to thank you, Jonathan, for this opportunity. This has been fun. It's made me think, and I appreciate it. Hopefully the viewers have as well. Thank you guys for continually tuning in. God bless you all. Take care of yourselves and each other. Grace and peace.